Hello and welcome to another comedian's interview for my blog and podcast, A Rich Comic Life. My name is Richard Gill and my blog describes my experiences of watching over 1,000 comedians over the last 47 years. My guest today is the wonderful comedian, Mr. Steve Best. Yay! Hello, mate.
That was a good intro. That was a big clap. That's the best I've got for ages. Nice, yeah.
How are you? You all right?
Yeah, very good. Very good.
Thank you so much for doing this. The interview is going to last about 45 minutes, and it's going to be all about your comedy career. And we're going to go right back to the start. Okay. And I'm going to ask you, how did you become a comedian in the first place, please?
In the first instance, how did I become a comedian? Well, I've done nothing else, basically. I excelled at school, and then I kind of started bunking off my sixth form and started doing kids magic shows and performance. So I learned all these skills of juggling and I ride unicycle and puppets and Punch and Judy. So I started out in kids stuff, really. And then I auditioned for a summer season, which is really weird because I didn't know about the comedy circuit at all. So I did this audition, and because I was kind of writing my own stuff then as well, it was very different to that kind of mainstream arena that like the caravan parks and kind of Butlins kind of feel to it. So yeah. They really liked me. I kind of really stormed this audition, and then I had to do 18 weeks. I was based in Exeter, and I did 18 weeks going around Torquay, Newquay, Paint, I know all around Devon and Cornwall, basically.
Wow!
And I got sacked off the first couple because I was so different to what they were expecting, and so I had to kind of acclimatise myself. But actual fact, there was a really good learning ground. That's where I learned a kind of a really I did everything in that as well. I juggled, I did stand up, all weird and wonderful stuff. And magic was my big thing because I was obsessed with magic when I was growing up.
Yeah,
it's the Young Magician of the Year final in 1985, I think it was.
Good man, that's fantastic.
Yeah, the Polka Theatre when I was 13 or 14. So I was really obsessed with magic. I loved it. So I kind of combined all that into this show, and then I did the summer season, and that was really full on. I came into London, and that's when there weren't that many people doing it, and I had a really strong. I mean, I was doing 45 minutes a night, and the comedy circuit was. You had to do 5-minute open spot.
Wow.
So I had a really, really strong 5 minute. I had a strong 25 that was stretched to 40. so I could do it. So I got onto the circuit pretty quickly, really.
So what sort of year was this then that you first started?
Oh man, it must have been 1991-ish too, something like that.
Right. It's funny that you mentioned Torquay and Paynton and everything, because one of the first gigs I ever saw was on a family holiday to Torquay when I was 10 with the family, and we went to see Tom O'Connor at the Festival Theatre in Paynton, and I sat there. And I burst out laughing at his jokes. And with my legendary laugh, I suddenly realised, my God, I'm loud. And it actually floored him.
Really? He can do, yeah. He can do an extra loud laugh.
And then came back on again. It was extraordinary.
But that was the circuit I was doing at that time, because you'd have whole families there. You have the children, parents, and grandparents all watching the same kind of show. So you had to kind of keep it quite clean and all this stuff. So it was a good learning ground,
Yes.
And I remember one of the venues, Little and Large, was coming the next week. So
Brilliant.
It was that kind of,
Brilliant. What is wonderful about your act when I've seen it is the unpredictability of it, because you can be so outrageous and wild, and I think with the magic and the unicycling and all the rest of it, it's brilliant building ground and experience for your act that you've got now.
Yes, I think so. And what I try to do, because in the magic world, you buy a trick and people tend to do the same patter. And so I always got something and thought of a different way of doing it and doing my own gags around it. So but I don't really do much magic in the act now. But it's
No.
unpredictable because I sometimes do. And there's a trick I do, which is a fantastic trick where you can get anybody in the audience to name any card in a deck of cards, and you can bring out a wallet, and in the wallet is an envelope. In the envelope is one card, which is their called out card, and it's such a stunning trick that people don't. They think there's some comedy there, but there's no comedy. That's what I do. All this mucking around and surreal rubbish, and then suddenly do this amazing magic trick, and it's like, wow, it's great. Yeah, so
that is superb. That is wonderful. So you're going along doing your 5-minute slots. Did you have friends coming along supporting you in clubs? Is that how you developed it, or were you just? Did it just develop as you got more and more work?
Yeah, I mean, I think in those days when we had a really good time on the circuit, because you just did your open spot of 5 minutes, and if you were good, they'd ask you back to do 10.
Yeah.
And nowadays, as you know, there's open spot nights, or bringers as well, and that never was in my day. That didn't happen. So you go to a really good established club like the Ball and Banana, or Ha Bloody Ha, and they'd have a slot for an open spot. So you do your open spot on a pro night, and if you did well, then you come back and do 10, and if you did well, you come back and do a 20-minute open spot, 20-minute paid set. That's how it worked, and then you kind of bump into comedians along the way and make friends that way. Yeah,
that's brilliant. So you mentioned, I mentioned the unpredictability of the act. Do you have any idea what you're going to do and say before you go on stage?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a myth, isn't it? It's the same with the Eddie Izzard thing, where you think, oh, he's kind of improvising, making it all up. I think it's very well rehearsed. I know what I'm doing. I mean, there might be something happening in the audience that you have to play with.
Yeah.
But generally, I think most acts have got a running list or set list, and there's people like Ross Noble who I think was very good at playing around with stuff and coming back.
That's brilliant. Yeah.
I think most people, you have a kind of a set list, you know what you're doing.
Yeah, we saw Tommy Cooper in the 70s live on stage. It was one of the first I ever saw, and the curtains opened and he's just lying on a bed. Nothing happens, and there's one woman in the audience crying with laughter, and it trickles round, and after about 5 minutes he popped his head up and he just went, what somebody come on.
Absolutely. I mean, there was I'm sure there was kind of moments of him improvising a little bit, but he knew, he's one of those guys who is naturally, innately funny.
Yeah,
as a person and to look at, I think.
Yeah. Well, you're the same with your visual comedy. I have to say, you have a very, very funny face on stage that makes people laugh, and that's a wonderful. I always say the greater comedians go on stage and don't do anything. So you've got Eric Morecambe twiddling his glasses, or the Fairs, or. And if you've got a funny face to start with, like Les Dawson, he was another early one I saw, you're halfway there, but with your material and the visual humour, it works like a dream, my friend. It always has. I've been a fan for years.
Hey, that's really nice. I didn't know you were, actually. That's great. I kind of, I think it's a kind of a love-hate thing as well. And I think there are some people who are watching me with stunned silence thinking, what's going on? But there's the other extreme where people really love it, and I think that's really nice. I think.
Yeah. Can you tell me about your writing process, if you've got one, for a routine or a show? How do you go about thinking about ideas?
It's funny. I've been a bit naughty with it. I think that in the early days, I really spent a lot of time writing and thinking, and that's mostly slightly why. One doesn't progress as much as one can, because the people who do are constantly working and constantly writing. I think what the circuit did to me and is that I had a really strong 20-30 minute set, and I kind of kept to that. And I think nowadays, and even then, really, the journey, you should keep journeying and keep changing. And I got quite scared of taking such a really strong bit out, and so I'd keep stuff for too long in a way. But the process is the visual, the routines are different to the actual one-liner joke. So I do think of a topic on a one-liner joke and think, the funny bit around, say, want to do a joke about a dentist. So then I would sit down with a piece of paper or a computer now and work out all the stuff about dentists and try and work out my funny idea about a dentist. But a routine is very different because it's very visual. So something like the Elvis routine I do, I don't know where that came from. I think I saw a toilet seat in a pound shop or something like that, and I just thought I'll have that. So what I used to do is I used to just buy stuff that I thought was visually funny and have it in a big prop box, and then I'd come to that prop box, open it up, and just think of ideas. And then I had this Elvis wig, and it came together, and I just thought there must be something here. And then because of the magic idea of eating,
that's brilliant.
So those kind of visual routines are much harder to actually sit down and write. I think you've got to have a prop box of stuff and think, what's funny.
Yeah. There's two that instantly come to mind. Two prop comedians. One is Tim Vine, who does it brilliantly, and the other one is Darren Walsh. And he once handed me a picture of a bee, and he pointed at me, and I lifted the picture up, and he went, "Behold!" and he got a laugh.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, those kind of it's like Raymond and Timpkins. I mean, they play along with those kind of the word Mr. Raymond and Mr. Timpkins. Show.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, it's brilliant. It's a weird question to ask, maybe, but what do you think makes a good comedian? Is there an answer?
Well, I know we're going to talk a bit about the photography as well a little bit later.
Yeah, definitely.
But the fact is that I had that same question: what makes a good photographer? And same with the comedy. There's the classic line of the timing of it, and there's so many courses of how to learn comedy. But I also think it's very hard. There's an essence there, or whatever it is, that it's very hard to teach. You can teach someone, and same with photography. You can teach someone the technicalities of something, of how to write a joke or how to hold a microphone or all that stuff. But sometimes I do think that there's something that's either innate or that you kind of innately know about timing or what's funny. So timing is an important aspect of it. There is that something else that's very hard to put a finger on.
It's a very good answer. Very interesting. Yes. When I started this blog, I went to a half-day comedy writing course, and the rest of the people around me wanted to be reviewers. And the woman who was running the writing course came up to me and went, "We can't remember why we invited you." And I said, "Well, I'm not a reviewer, I'm not a diarist, I'm not a critique, I'm not a reporter, I'm a member of the audience out to have a good time, and I'm trying to write an enthusiastic blog." And they never bothered me again.
Really? Yeah, that's very nice.
The rest of them, the reviewers, were really critical, but I just think...
But that's what I like. I think what you're doing is actually joyous. I think that you're not coming to try and trip anybody up.
Yeah,
you're genuinely interested in certain comedians. I mean, you might not interview comedians you don't, and comedy is very subjective. So something you find funny, and that's why people in a way need critics, but in a way they don't. I think it's a really hard. That's another kind of blog podcast, I think.
Very much so. To date, what has been your best and worst comedy gig? I can't imagine you ever having a bad comedy gig because you're a very funny man. But do you have any stories?
You sometimes miss the mark. I mean, I think I'll do the worst feeling one was Glastonbury a long time ago. It was the one where it was the wettest on record.
Wow.
And it was one of the first. I was the first one that my girlfriend, now wife, had come to see, I think. So we drove all the way down to Glastonbury, and it was the wettest on record. It was horrible. The audience were really, not happy. It was waterlogged. Everything was just mud.
I remember rolling around in the mud on the TV.
It was really muddy, and everybody. And the comedy tent was huge, and this was the time of Corky and the Juice Pigs.
Oh, yes, yeah.
So they were on and they stormed it. I mean, they absolutely blew it apart. And I think they got 2 encores, and they should have closed the show.
Yeah.
And then the compere comes on and then introduces Mr. Methane. Do you know Mr. Methane?
Oh, I saw him at the Edinburgh Festival. Yes.
Oh, yeah. So basically, if your listeners and
a unique act.
he basically is like there was an old French wasn't there a musical act who basically can fart at will.
That's right. Yeah.
So he put, and it's true, I think, because he put talcum powder on his bum and then he'd do a fart, so you see the talcum powder spray out, so that it's proof that he's farting. He's in a leotard, so there's no machinery there.
I remember, yeah.
And then he would fire stuff for his fart.
Yes.
So basically, Corky and the Juice Pigs stormed it encore, and then Mr. Methane went on and only did about 10 minutes because that's all he's booked for, and he stormed it as well. And then they brought on me. Such an anti-climax because I was little jokes and mucking around, and Corky, the other act was so big really, and then I kind of did all right. I held my ground. There was no booing on it like that, but it was just kind of not.
What am I doing here?
And then I came off stage, and people came up to me and was kind of saying, "Are you all right? You all right?" I said, "Yeah, it was just really tough." And then when I was unpacking my props, I found hundreds of little mud balls in my props.
Oh, man.
While I was on stage, people were chucking mud at me, which none of them hit my face. So I didn't know that was happening. Because I was going through my props.
Wow. So that was a highlight.
Yeah, that's my best show. And then I think as a response and just as where you're on a different plane, I think.
Yeah,
this is it. This is all about live comedy. I supported Frank Skinner a long time ago on his. We did 80 dates. We ended up at the Battersea Power Station,
wow.
which was the biggest live event at the time. This was before the stadium gigs.
Yeah.
And that wasn't the show I'm talking about. That was quite a hard gig. But we did the Birmingham Hippodrome for 8 nights because it's his hometown, and Frank Skinner's show wasn't that easy to support him because they'd all come to see him. It was quite a football-y crowd.
Yeah.
I did very well for him on most of the gigs, and the Birmingham was good. But then I dashed across the road to the Glee Club in Birmingham.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it was because I've been playing in front of 1,500, 2,000 people a night. And Birmingham Glee Club is, although it's a big club on the circuit, it's like 300 people, 400 people, which is a big club for a circuit gig. But because I've been playing these big venues and I was doing this stuff on stage, I came to do the Glee Club and I just ripped it so hard. It was just people. That Damon who used to run, who works for Off the Curb now, still remembers that gig when he was working.
That's fantastic.
Best gig he's ever seen. It was just on a plane. It was everything. It was just people were crying. You know, it was great.
And you must be you must have been loving it because you were fueled to go and do it.
Yeah, and also the response from the Skinner gig obviously is okay, but it's never going to be a storming gig because they haven't come.
Yeah.
And this one was they've just come to see comedy, and I just done 20-25 minutes, 20-25 at the Hippodrome, and then this club I just had everything. It's just extraordinary.
Yeah. Was there a point, do you think, in your career where you thought to yourself, I can do this for a full-time job and I can do it well, or it can pay the bills, or was there a point where you thought I can continue doing this?
Oh, absolutely. I think it wasn't long after I started.
Yeah.
So I was getting booked because I was, as I said, come off that summer circuit. I had a really strong 20, and then you get into jongleurs, and the money then was really good.
Yeah.
And they gave you hotels, and you could make a really good living. And I was making very good living for years, 20 odd years or so, before you realise you can't, because it's very changed now. I think the circuit financially has really changed. The money hasn't gone up. You must have had this, talking to other people, but and you can't get bitter about it. That's just the nature of what happens. It's
of
before
course.
the internet in a way, so you had to go and see live. So it was a really, really great 10, 12 years.
That's superb. When you're on stage, how do you remember all your routines? Do you have a way of remembering them, or do you like the unpredictability of anything can happen?
Well, I think generally because I haven't changed my material that often, you just remember it. I mean, you must remember, Rich, I was doing every night of the week kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
you just go back out and do the more or less the same stuff in a way. And I mean, you've got to be careful with that. So you add in bits and pieces. But there was a stage, I remember I was supporting Craig Charles as well. I did 3 months where I didn't have a night off. And some of the nights I was doubling up. So I was doing Craig's gig because I was off stage by 8 o'clock. And I'd find another gig in the same town, and do that one. So I was earning a fortune and just not stopping. I didn't have kids then, and it was just bang out, and it was great. But you do get a bit tired after a while,
I'm not surprised. That's incredible. With all the enthusiasm that you deliver on stage, all the visual humour and everything, I can't imagine you ever getting nervous. Do you suffer from nerves before you go on, or anything like this?
Well, I think the nature of what I do, I actually sometimes look a bit nervous on stage because it's very kind of, people actually do say that to me. Are you nervous? I said, oh no, I've done this a little bit, so I'm not really. I tend not to get. I mean, back in the day when you had a little bit of television here and there, or a corporate gig, I'd pace it a bit. I mean, I still pace it, but that's just my nature backstage. I kind of pace around backstage because that's the energy building up. So I don't really I don't worry too much. I think now I don't worry what happens anymore, because
would you say as soon as you speak into the microphone any nerves go because you're there in the moment wanting to make the audience laugh?
Kind of. I think it's more the fact that after the first 10 seconds, knowing what the audience is about, and if they're into you, then you can relax a bit and muck around. Because there are still times where, for whatever reason, that first 10-20 seconds is very important. So if they don't quite buy in, I've had it times where where they don't quite buy into the character, and they're just not going to go for it, and that can be a bit nervous and a bit of a slog, really.
You see, I find that incredulous, because one thing you are when you're on stage is very, very endearing. But and that is a massive quality to have, because you want to go for a drink with you afterwards. You want to find out more about you because you're very, very endearing, as well as visual and, I wouldn't say crazy, but manic, which is all comedic qualities to have.
It is, but that's again your subjective, because some people don't get that.
That's
fine. And also, it's strange because I've not been recognised 20 minutes after I've done my set standing in the bar, because my on stage, I mean, I'm quite calm at the moment, but on stage I go a bit mad and manic, as you say, and so I'm very different to look at when I'm, same person, but
It's wonderful. It really is. I am extremely fortunate to be able to go to the Edinburgh Fringe every year. I've been going since 2005. And the only two I missed were obviously because of the pandemic. But it's my holiday every year. I go for a week and I see about 50 shows, and I need a holiday by the time I come back. I'm exhausted. What was your first ever Edinburgh Fringe like?
Well, the first one I did was actually with the Big Value comedy show that was run by Pete Harris at the time, Scream with a Murder. So he took a crew up, and I think I did it with Steve K. Amos. I can't remember who else it was. There's a few. He's a good
comedian, Steve.
So I loved it because it was underwritten. We had to go out. We had to go out and fly for the show. Right. It was a very popular show because it had been running a year, 2 years before. So it's like a package show. You had to do 20 minutes each, 3 acts and a compere, I think it was. And it was great for me because you didn't have to do your full hour. And I loved it. I got on really well with the acts. We had a really good time.
So were you like doing 20 minutes between 3 of you or something like that for the hour? Was that?
I think it was just over an hour, I think, because it was a package show and he did it in. So I think it was 3 acts and a compere.
And what year was this?
Oh man, I really can't remember the year.
Decade? The decade?
Okay. It must be 1990s then.
90s, yeah. So, do you regularly go or to
No,
the...
I think I made a mistake really of not
Right.
regularly going. I think that I was such a club comic,
Yeah,
and I always felt that Edinburgh Festival was a very different beast. It was where you kind of do a theme show, or there was a time I think where you'd have the best of.
yeah,
That's what I did. That's when I went up for my time. I did the best of all my stuff, and but generally, it's, all the stuff now is there's some kind of story to it, or
yeah.
meaning to
It
it. And I
caters for...
always think that comedy for me, I just love comedy as a stand-up.
Yeah,
I don't,
yeah.
there are some shows. I mean, I've seen Kim Noble a few times, who I think is fantastic.
Yeah,
I just think that's very different, and that's a very much an Edinburgh
yeah,
theatre
yeah.
show. I just felt that I was a stand-up more than anything, rather than.
So
But
your best of show that you took up there, was that a full hour solo show? Have you done?
Yeah, I was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was very lucky. I can't remember what year that was, but I was in the Pleasance. What was I can't remember, the Cavern, I think it was called then.
Yeah,
200 seaters. It was a big room, and that was underwritten as well because someone was really into my stuff, and they took me up, and they took the first $3,000 loss or something like that. That's what it was.
Oh dear.
It lost the show because it sold really well, but what Edinburgh's like. Then, all the publicity and the accommodation, blah blah blah, and it lost about £3,005. So I was covered basically. So, but I loved the show, but it was a roller coaster because I got a 5-star review near the end.
Well done.
And I also got a 1-star for the same show.
Well done.
And I'm one of the only people. There's about 8 of us, and Bill Bailey, I think, is one of them. Who did that? Who's got a 1-star and a 5-star for the same show? And it just shows you how subjective everything is. And it was the 1-star was from a student magazine or something like that, and it just didn't get. It was called my show was called Steve Best is Immature, and
fantastic.
Their critique was this is a bit immature. This that was like yeah, right, yeah, but as I said, some people don't buy into it, but it was a roller coaster because I actually read the reviews rather than just not read anything, and the 5-star review came near the end, and if that had come at the beginning, then
Wow. Have you been up there as a punter just to see shows?
Yeah, so I should have gone back the next year. That's what I really should have done. But what I did do is I started up a company called Abnormally Funny People with a friend of mine who's disabled, and that Abnormally Funny People was all about championing disabled comedians.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, in 2005, Sky did a documentary about us going up to Edinburgh.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, and that was really good. So I was very much involved in that company for 10 years, kind of working out shows. So I went up with them.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, so I did that, but I haven't gone up again as a solo show. I've gone up as photographs, which we'll talk about later, and I've only gone up as a punter when I've gone up for something to do with comedy or whatever. Yeah. So I've never gone up as I kind of find it's a bit too much of a busman's holiday. I kind of
you're not as crazy as me booking 40 odd shows for August this year.
I mean, have you already booked them? Is it on the Free Fringe as well, or everywhere?
Well, I'll fit 4 or 5 more in, but there's about 10 of us going up there at all the different times of the week, and they all join me at different intervals. It's just the best. Your liver gets battered, but you're on holiday. Let us move on to your other great profession. You are a wonderful photographer, and you have written or photographed 2 books that I've got here that you very kindly sent to me. One is called Comedy Snapshot, and the other one is called Joker Face. Can you tell me how all this came about? How did you become a photographer? How did you get to know all the comedians and let you photograph them?
Yeah, so I've always been into art. My mum was an artist, I've
Yeah.
always been into photography, so I've always kind of carried a camera around with me, little point and shoot. And I think there was another guy, Anvil Springsteen. I remember. I don't know if you know Anvil Springsteen. He moved to Australia and then he's back here again, I think. He's a really nice comedian. I was based in Newcastle. And I remember him taking pictures. This was with a film camera. And I used to take pictures of the film. I remember taking a picture of Lee Evans actually backstage at the Glee Club in Cardiff, I think it was. And so I was always into photography. And then I started getting a bit more serious with it, but not that serious, and just bringing a point and shoot digital with me.
Yeah.
Backstage with me to gigs. So I was doing gigs every night of the week, and then I would just shoot, take a snap of a comedian, thinking about putting it on Facebook or whatever on social media, thinking nothing of it. And I think at the time Bob Mills was saying you should do something with this.
Yeah.
So I thought this is a really good record of the comedy circuit, and that's what it was. And then I thought, actually, I'll ask them a few questions. So I'd ask every comedian to give me a one-liner joke if they had one of theirs, and 4 or 5 facts about themselves that are not on Wikipedia, but just something a bit weird and wonderful. And I'd write when the shot was taken and what club.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I just started compiling it, and that's what happened to the Comedy Snapshot. I just thought I should just do something with this. So I kind of went with a friend, Drew Barr. And by day, Drew DeSoto is a designer. He runs a design company. So I went into his offices and he taught me about InDesign and Photoshop, and we designed this book. And he's got a little publishing wing, and so we published Comedy Snapshot, and that's got about 450 comedians in or so.
Yeah.
I got told off, I didn't put any page numbers or any index, so people would go around getting it fine.
There was that. I keep looking at them going, oh, I've seen so-and-so, is he in here? I don't know.
Well, there's a few people who've got lots of signatures in there, and they've actually done their own index now, so they know what's in there. So
Jokerface was an extension, was it?
So while I was doing Comedy Snapshot and I published it, I thought I missed out so many comedians that I want to get in. So Jokerface was a bit more of not necessarily me working with them. I just went out of my way to find these comedians. So that people like Alexis Sale, I've been got people like Clive Anderson and just people that Kim Noble I really liked. I wanted to get him in there. So I went to photograph him, and it's the same process of a joke, 4 or 5 facts, but that one, because of Comedy Snapshot, Unbound, which is a crowdfunding publisher, really liked it, so they managed the project and we crowdfunded that one through their
brilliant. Before we go on to your new book, I want to personally thank you for 2 things, because when I see the comedians, I like to have a photograph taken with them, and they're more than willing to have a photograph taken on my mobile phone. When I was at the Edinburgh Fringe one year, I met Mervyn Stutter, and you very kindly did a photograph of me and him, and it's one of my favourite photographs that I've ever had out of the 1,000 that I've done. And the other thing was, reading these books gave me the idea for the blog, because the blog was originally going to be a book about and basically it's all about my experiences as an audience member of watching the comedians. So it's slightly different to the questions and the facts and everything. Not the questions, the jokes and the facts and everything. But the premise of your books gave me an idea for this. It all started off the great long spreadsheet of every act I ever saw, and I thought, who's going to want to look at this? But it's just taken off. So thank you so very much, and I might get the book published. I've still got the manuscript. It's all in the blog now, but who knows? I did have a look at Unbound. I might ask them again. You use Unbound quite a bit, don't you, for your publishing? Is that right?
Well, that was just one. I mean, ultimately, Unbound they really liked the idea. They gave me a 2-book deal.
Right.
So I did Jokerface, and then I was going to do this next one with them as well. This was like maybe 3 years ago now. We were talking about this book. There's good and bad about Unbound. I think they're very good at what they do.
Yeah.
but they use all your contacts to pledge
Right.
for the book. They've got their platform that they do as well, but they do rely on all your contacts and everybody for you to social media the hell out of it so people buy it. So it's all about pre-sales. And I didn't want to go back to the same people and say, look, I'm doing another book.
Yeah.
And also the problem is this next book is really expensive to produce. So
Yeah,
Josie
yeah.
Face was a certain price, but this next one, because it's an art book, is really, because I want to get it properly, professionally, beautifully done. So it's getting printed in Italy, and the design is lovely. So it's really expensive, and I didn't know if I could actually do that.
Tell me more about it, because I've ordered it. It's out in September 22 and it's called Comedians.
Yeah, so this
looks like a really good coffee table book. I'm going to be fascinated. Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
tell me more about it.
Yeah, I'm so proud of this one. This is my masterpiece, I think, in the sense that while I was snapping comedians backstage, I was also got much more into my photography, and I started doing proper docu kind of backstage candid shots of comedians, famous comedians, not so famous comedians, and also comedians on stage as well. But because I've got this access, I've known these comedians for so long, I've got access to backstage, and a lot of my on-stage shots are shot backstage onto the stage. So they're very different angles, and they're not flat, and there's an art quality to it that I really like. So that is going to be about 240 pages and about 136 images in the book.
I'm really looking forward to it, my friend. I can't wait to see it. It sounds amazing.
Yeah, we're just finishing the design. We're just doing the proofreading, and then it's going off to Italy to be printed over the summer and then delivered in September. So yeah,
brilliant. And I've also seen one or two of your exhibitions as well. You've had one or two exhibitions with the comedians as well, with photographs, haven't you?
So those photographs in the book. So those ones in the exhibition are in the book. So
right,
the exhibition was called Comedians Back to Front, which was going to call the book Comedians Back to Front, but we just called it Comedians. I think it's a simple title. And then so it's actually, the exhibition's still on because they haven't taken it down because of COVID. Right. So it's at the Observatory Photography Gallery in Marchmont Street, which is near Russell Square. So that's and we're going to have the launch there as well, because he was the first professional photography guy who saw my pictures and thought, these are really good. You're not just a comedian. So he's the one who inspired me to move on to a bigger arty thing there.
When is the launch? Is it going to be in September?
No, so I'm going to try and get the people who pre-ordered and the books, I'll try and get those out by the end of September.
Right.
The actual proper launch will be at the end of October.
Right.
So you'll get your books, whoever's bought them will get them before. I've just, in the last week, I've just got sales and distribution now. So that hopefully they'll get into proper bookshops now as well, and the Tate bookshop and Photographers Gallery and all the Waterstone. So I've got sales on it now. So
I'm so pleased for you, mate. I really am. It's so well deserved because it is a talent. I'm telling you, the photographs are superb. There was one. I was very fortunate. I'm very fortunate to have a lot of the comedians on the podcast, and one in particular, I probably was the last person to interview Barry Cryer.
Oh, yeah.
He came on here. It was extraordinary. And your photograph of him that I know you've used to publicize the book is amazing, because you've captured this is the great thing. You capture them very naturally, but you can see how wonderful they are, just about to go on stage or just about to tell a punchline. It's a fascinating thing, and I wish you every success with it. I really do.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, I mean, the Barry Cryer is a lovely picture. I think actually I've got a print of his that he signed. He signed 6 of them, and I'm selling these prints to help fund the book. That's how I did it. I kind of crowdfunded it myself in a way.
Yeah.
There were packages where you could buy prints, and the Barry Cryer, when he died, actually, all those prints sold I mean, obviously,
Wow.
I mean, it's very sad. I mean, I just got him to sign them maybe 3 months before, something like that.
I met him 2 or 3 times, but unfortunately, I never got a photo.
Yeah,
But
he's a nice,
what a
he was a
what
lovely
a
guy. He
genuine,
always
lovely.
had time for people, really.
Yeah, very much so. I went to the celebration of his life on the 13th of June. It was amazing.
Yeah.
Do you have any further ambitions as a comedian or a photographer? Is it going to be more books? Do you want to go on TV and host your own quiz show? Anything like?
Well, funny enough, there is a documentary. Joe Bohr has done a documentary, and that's coming out, being previewed in Bedford next Sunday.
Wow.
And it's called The Clowntographer, which is a name I had on my business cards for a while, because I thought that's a clowntographer. I'm a clowntographer, so I do photography and clowning, But it's a really lovely documentary. It's not really about me. It's about my journey. I talk to photographers. I talk to Don Ward at the Comedy Store about pictures on the wall. It's about photography, really. And I talk to other photographers as well who photograph comedians. And it's just about what makes a good comedy photograph. But from that idea so I do want to do a show, which I've been pitching, and we're close, maybe. I won't go into it properly here, because just in case, but it's based on my comedy and being a photographer and interviewing people.
That's brilliant.
So I'd love for something like that to happen, because that would take me to the next level on that. But on the photography, I mean, obviously carrying on photographing backstage, front stage, but I think I've also got to do other topics as well as a documentary kind of photographer. So I think this will act as a very lovely calling card, an expensive calling card, but to say, look, this guy can take photographs really well, and get into a different world. You can do anything really. Once people trust you, so you could go and photograph snooker players or something like that. I like people. I like backstage, and I like the spotlight. So you could, there's lots of things you could do. So
that's fantastic. So it is. You are extremely ambitious. You've got a lot of good ideas.
Yes, I mean, it's strange, because I've been a stand-up for more than I've been a photographer in a way, and yet I think I put more work and creative thinking into my photography than I've done in my comedy. So it's quite strange.
I think definitely certainly with the comedy photography, you have found a niche. It's like as I said about me with this, I don't think anybody has ever examined comedy from an audience point of view, or could be bothered to actually write about it, or be as enthused about it. And I don't see myself as being enthused, because I'm enjoying myself so much watching it.
But that's beautiful. I mean, I think I agree. I think there's always little angles that people find fascinating, and it's all about human nature, and you're coming from, as you say, a different perspective. So good luck to it. I think that there'll be a space for it, I'm sure. Yeah,
very much so. Have you done many online gigs as opposed to live gigs?
No, I'm not objecting to it, but I did a few with abnormally funny people, and I'm fine with it. I was kind of compared it. It's not as fun.
No.
But I think there are certain things that would work. I think like a magician would work well on. I know a friend of mine has done fantastically well with Zoom gigs, because you could do corporate Zoom gigs and not leave the house, and do every hour basically. So normally with a corporate gig, you have to get there, you have to set up, but he's charging what is the same and doing like 5 a day. That was in the in the pandemic and Zoom.
Yeah.
But for me, I think comedy is such a live thing that I don't have much joy in either watching it or performing it, really. I think it's got to be live.
Very much so. I totally agree. When it first started, when the online gigs first started, when we were in lockdown, I don't know how I would have coped without it. I always look at it as a very good substitute. And I would go on a Monday night. I'd go to Monday Night Comedy with Sean James, Happy Mondays, And then, of course, there's Always Be Comedy, my regular club. They did it online, still doing it online. And I'd also go to Charlotte Regan's Irishman Abroad on a Friday. And when they did it well, it was really good. But when they first started, there was no audio, so I would sit here laughing at four walls, and I thought I'd be taken away.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when they got the audio, the comedians could then judge the jokes, chat to the audience, etc., etc. But I'm with you 110%. Thank God the comedy clubs are open, because comedy should and always be live. Because I love the fact that it's of the moment. You go into I love to go out for a few drinks and then with some friends, and then sit down in an audience and go, right, here we go. And it's of the moment. You never know what's going to happen, and that's the magic of it. Like me, do you go to a lot of comedy gigs as a member of the audience, or have you ever done that?
No, I mean, I it's a funny kind of transition from when you start, you stay and watch everything, you get there on time, you get there at the start of the show, and then you get to a stage where you're doing so many that you end up just coming for your bit and then buggering off, kind of thing. It does depend, but I very rarely, there's very few comedians that I would pay to go and see now, because I could go and see them, and you know, I've been to the Comedy Store a lot where they've had those big charity shows to photograph, so I see the show there. But people like Stuart Lee, I would go and see. There's a few comedians. Kim Noble. I know he's doing another Soho run, actually, Kim Noble, and I'll book a ticket there, because I just think that there are some people that are just sublime. They're on a different level, I think.
Are they your favourite comedians? Would you have a list of favourite comedians?
Yeah, so I remember getting really into Steve Martin.
Oh, you and me both.
And you know, I was very kind of influenced by like Tommy Cooper first, and then Steve Martin, because he came at a time when everybody was doing observational or whatever, and he just took the surreal shit and just fucked around. It was so funny. And you know, the arrow through the head, the white suit, the juggling with the oranges, and it was just mad. And his CDs, and at the time you could listen to his live show. I loved Steve Martin, really loved him. And his books, Born Standing Up, I think it is. I've
got it here. It's amazing.
It's one of the best books on stand up, because it doesn't it stops at the big stadium stuff. It just is build up. It's great. It's a really good, very intelligent.
It's extraordinary that when he was so popular, he walked away from the live stage, and then he went into films, and he had that great run of about 10 films with Carl Reiner, and there was playing Trains and Automobiles. He was brilliant in as well. And I can remember when I was at college in Stoke, me and my friend, they had All of Me on a showing, and I think that's his greatest performance, where he plays half a man and half a woman.
All of Me, and The Jerk and all that.
Trying at that all the way through.
Those early films were just great, and I think that
Man with Two Brains as well.
I'd be interested to see them now, whether they've seen the best of time.
Oh, superb, absolutely, and really groundbreaking as well. The one where they had all the black and white films, Dead Men. That was extraordinary. Or something, yeah. He was wonderful, and I was very fortunate to go and see him. He was playing the Hammersmith Apollo with his bluegrass band about 5 years ago.
I saw him at the Royal Festival with his bluegrass band, but he didn't do any comedy though, did he?
Well, the bluegrass band were amazing.
Yeah.
And he had the odd joke as he went along, but at the end of our one, he did the King Tut.
Oh, right.
So he had the routine and everything. And I was going to go and see Steve Martin and Martin Short at Royal Albert Hall, but COVID hit, which was a shame. But and they haven't rescheduled it. But I'm so pleased Murders in the Building is doing well as well. Only Murders in the Building, the Disney thing.
Is that good? Have you seen it?
Yeah, it's really good. It's very.
I'm not a massive fan of I saw there was a them doing on Netflix, the two of them just doing a stage show.
Yeah,
together,
yeah.
weren't they? And I felt that a bit too show busy for me. It was a bit too. It was a bit too contrived. I always think Steve Martin was so good at really mucking around.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I think when he was Martin, you know.
I loved the Three Amigos. I loved Chevy Chase as well. And Martin Short was in that.
But the other ones, just very quickly, when I was
yeah.
decorating my first flat, I was obsessed with Bill Hicks. I know people don't think so much of him now, but I still think he was the master. And I know people slightly accuse him of being misogynistic or homophobic or something like that, but I think he had a twist on everything. And I remember listening to, I think it was Arizona Bay and Ranting E Mine or A Mine, Ranting. And those two albums are seminal. I just think that those two albums are just pitch perfect. And we had the music playing in the background of the guitar. I just thought but just the technique and he was brilliant. He was
superb. I was very, very lucky. I saw him live at the Royal Exchange in Manchester just before he died, and he came on about midnight. He gave the impression he didn't want to be there, but by God, you listened to that man, and he had the audience. He just controlled the room brilliantly, and put everybody down without them realizing, because of the jokes that they did, and he was just extraordinary. In his book, I've got as well. It's amazing. He was an astonishing comic.
Oh, absolutely. His book's great. I think it was. It's hugely sad. It'd be so interesting to see what he would make of today's politics. I mean, I think he'd be brilliant.
Very much so. Yes, indeed. Anybody else?
So yeah, it was Steve Martin, Bill Hicks, and I can't. As I said, Kim Noble, Stuart Lee. I do think that of what's happening now, he's just brilliant. Yeah,
brilliant. One of my favourites was Rick Mail, who played Carlisle, my home city, and he jumped onto the stage after the intro to the Muppet Show played. He jumped on, his trousers exploded, and one person sitting next to me in the audience was not laughing, and he went, "Ladies and gentlemen of the Carl," they kept calling him the Carlisle audience, "you," and he pointed at this bloke and threw him out. He was absolutely amazing. Yeah. But so there's so many happy memories, and of course that's why the blog exists. Yeah. Extraordinary. I've so much enjoyed talking to you. It's been absolutely wonderful, and I wish you every success with everything you do. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we go? Where can people find you on social media? You got any gigs coming up? Your book is out September, October time, and anything you want to add?
Well, it depends when your blog's coming out, because they can still pre-order the book. So if it's coming out, it'll be already out.
Well, this will be broadcast 2023, so it'll be 2 or 3 months.
they get my next book after that. So social media wise, I'm either at Steve Best Pics for all my photography stuff, or at Steve Best Comic at my comedy stuff. So that's kind of it, really. And stevebest.com as a website. That's it. Yeah.
Good man. Well, I'm as I say, I'm really looking forward to the new book, and I'm looking forward to coming to see you live again soon.
Yeah,
because you're a very, very funny man.
Cheers, man.
You always were. All right, my friend. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and all the best to you.
Cheers.